This is Townsquare Sunday on 1420 WBSM, a place where people come together to talk about some of the good things happening in and around New Bedford. A place to share, a place on the radio for the people.
Come together right now over me.
And now, the moderator of Townsquare Sunday, 1420 WBSM's Jim Phillips.
Good morning and welcome to our weekly meeting place on the air. I'm Jim Phillips. You're listening to Townsquare Sunday. We're on the air every Sunday at 6 a.m., 1420 WBSM. My guest this week is Reverend David Lima, the Executive Minister of the Interchurch Council of New Bedford. He is a somewhat frequent guest here, that's true. He is involved in so much. Every time he's on, I say to myself, gee, we ran out of time. We didn't touch on this. We didn't talk about that. So today it's time to catch up a little bit. Welcome again, Reverend Lima.
Great to be here, Jim, as always.
Let's talk about Rise Up for Homes. It's an organization. You folks may have seen billboards out there. But first off, what is Rise Up?
Again, Rise Up for Homes is an arm of the Homeless Service Providers Network of Greater New Bedford. It's a continuum of care. HUD has determined that all major areas that receive any kind of monies from the federal government, from HUD itself, to help with the homeless, has to have a continuum of care. You got to show that there's a lot of people working together in various areas to be able to help folks from homelessness or near homelessness right into being back on their feet and into their own places. Rise Up came up a couple of years ago when we realized that we needed to have funding that would be separate from that money from HUD so that we could pay for emergency shelter during cold winter months. New Bedford is the only city that puts any money into it in the whole South Coast, anywhere near here. Nobody else puts any money into it at all, but it's not enough. We're grateful for what we receive, but it's not enough. Last year, we actually spent more money than the city allocated. We spent more money than they did. And this year, it's well ahead of that pace. Again, we're probably going to be at least at 150% more than what we did last year because it's just been such a cold year.
Funding from HUD, $1 million, I think. That was
Actually, the number is closer to $1.7 million.
Wow.
Sounds like a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does sound like a
Stop
lot.
to consider what it takes to house folks, because that's part of it. You're putting people in some supportive housing, sheltering, and you're helping to counsel folks. You're helping to get them on their feet, sustain them. This is money that lasts for the whole year, so consider how much it costs you and your household, and then factor that out for the amount of people that we help. $1.7 million does not go real far when you really stop to consider that. Then it's the case managers that you have to have on board. A lot of people have, over the years, not to lay a whole lot of blame on talk radio, but even in the community, people say, oh, somebody's lining their pockets with that money. I can assure you, having worked with these folks for over now close to 14 years, nobody's lining their pocket with money. From the administrators on down, it's hard work and it's a constant turnover because there's not a lot of money in terms of what a person's making in order to do this work. And you're working with folks that have some, at times, some difficulties in just, capacity, being able to wherewithal for themselves, both mentally, physically, even sometimes just being able to fully grasp the situation they're in. And the one thing about that money, none at all, can go into transitional housing. Somebody that's homeless themselves right away into a temporary shelter. Everything has got to be housing first model, which means if you've got somebody on the street, let's get them into housing first. Well, that sounds wonderful. But if you've got somebody that's on the street, they're probably there for a reason. There's been something that's happened in their lives. Not everybody has lost a job and all of a sudden find themselves out of a home. So they may have a substance abuse issue. They may have some mental health issues. They may have some other issues that have caused them to not be able to maintain finances correctly, and then all of a sudden you're taking them, putting them right back into a house, giving them the money that they need, not directly to them, but to wherever the landlord is or the support system. And then all of a sudden, after a year or two of that kind of support, there's nobody there. Can't tell you how many times you end up with people back out on the street or in a dangerous position of homelessness again. So it is a lot of hard work. It's the people that we meet with on a monthly basis. I'm the chair for the Homeless Service Providers Network, have been for a few different years, a couple of different times. It's gratifying. It's probably the one group that does more work with, not a whole lot of fanfare, but at any meeting, literally 40 to 50 people show up. And to the point where I'm now asking Office of Housing Community Development to move the meeting from their boardroom across the street to the main library. And it is open if anybody wants to come and hear and see what's going on. We're definitely open to everybody.
You have an interesting arrangement, if you will, to raise money for Rise Up. Tell us about that.
It is an interesting arrangement. Again, we are a part of the HSPN, and the HSPN is out of the Office of Housing Community Development. It is a partnership between government, nonprofit, and volunteers. You cannot raise money through the Homeless Service Providers Network, so we do it through the Rise Up for Homes. Rise Up for Homes, again, is a lot of volunteers. One of the people that I have to give a lot of credit to who sits on our executive board is Peter Muse from First Citizens Federal Credit Union. They helped us with a web page, with a Facebook page. You can text to Rise Up for Homes. You can go to riseupforhomes.com, and you will know everything that we can put out there about the homelessness situation, signs of homelessness, how to get help, but it also is an avenue for people to be able to give. In fact, again, they have, through their marketing, they came up with billboards. You may be seeing billboards around this, 4 billboards with 4 different financial institutions that have dedicated their billboard for the month of January or February or both to promote Rise Up for Homes. And again, I give them a lot of credit because it is that altruistic piece. They're not promoting themselves, although if you get to see that bottom right-hand corner, you'll see which institution is sponsoring that billboard. But it helps get the awareness out, and that's the big thing. And we've been able to raise probably double the amount of money that we did last year, which is still not a lot. If we were to pay the whole bill ourselves, we would have to be starting from scratch next year, and that's difficult. We also do New Bedford Connect in the fall, which this year will be September, I believe, 19th, where it's basically a homelessness fair. So anybody who is homeless or is at risk of homelessness, we had over 40 tables last year, 40 different organizations, everything from, we had dental hygienists that came and worked with people. We had South Coast Hospitals and the Community Health Center doing screenings and flu shots and other things, as well as all the different agencies being able to help people get services.
On another issue, we could talk about Rise Up, I'm sure, for a great length of time, but the Catholic bishops this week, including Cardinal O'Malley, wrote a letter. They're pushing state lawmakers to pass a criminal reform bill. They are seeking more money for things like rehabilitation in prison and reentry programs to help people who are incarcerated get back into the community, and more money to deal with the mentally ill. We need all of that, don't we?
Oh, without a doubt. That's one of, again, speaking about the homelessness issue, one of the biggest places of need is reentry. And of course, nobody wants to think that the criminal that's been spending time in prison is going to be showing up next door to me. But let's stop to consider these things. Not everybody is a hardcore criminal. We may have made mistakes. Some people have done some things that they're not proud of, and they change. Prison can change them. Jail can change them. Prison, of course, is longer serving. Jail is the local areas. It might be up to 2 years. The thing is when they come out, if they've burned bridges with family and friends, and they don't have an opportunity because obviously they don't come out and they automatically have jobs or anything else. If we don't do something with them, stop to consider this society. If we do not do something to help them in some form, what are they going to do? All of a sudden, these folks are hopeless, feel helpless, and they go back to what may have caused them to go to prison in the first place. They may go back to stealing, robbing. They may go back to selling drugs or something else. We've seen it time and again. And because, again, when you keep telling somebody they're no good, even after they've paid their debt, you end up with trouble. So I haven't seen this that the Cardinals, that O'Malley and the other bishops put out. But I believe it's some of the same things that we've been talking about for a long time. If we don't do some kind of reform, if we don't do some kind of rehabilitation, or at least attempt it, then you're going to have difficulties, and you always will. You can never help change a person's life. And are there going to be some that won't change? Absolutely. And that's where we can definitely do the things that we have to do to keep them imprisoned or whatever. But that is, reform is definitely necessary.
You're listening to Townsquare Sunday on WBSM. My guest is Reverend David Leamy, the Executive Minister of the Interchurch Council of New Bedford. This is the 800-pound elephant in the room coming up here. That, of course, is the recent school shootings in Florida. There have been far too many of these. I think all of us can agree on that. The facts surrounding the gunman itself seem to cry out for intervention long before now. A lot of people, I think a lot of agencies, a lot of people to blame here, but I know you're never in the blame game. You're in the let's make it better game. And do you feel as frustrated as all of us feel?
I don't
think generally feels about this.
I don't think there's any doubt. People have for some reason given me a lot of credit for doing the things that I do, as well as so many others. And I always consider what is the reason why we do these things. You know, what drives a lot of us. And I'd love to tell you just what a perfect person I am, and I'm not. Lord knows. But I'll tell you one of the things and one of the reasons why I do so much of what I do. I have 6 granddaughters. I want a better future for them. I have 3 children. I worked hard to make sure they had a better chance. That's what we always want to do. And so when we hear things like this and we understand some of these difficulties, when I've done the work that I've done, as well as so many others in this community, and it's a small microcosm of this whole great society, we start to recognize that there are people that have issues, but if there is no place to be able to get them help, you're in trouble. This young man, his home life was a struggle.
Shambles, really.
Exactly. If we had had more services at one time, perhaps there was a place to divert him, as well as so many others. The mental health issues around in this country are massive, and to be able to give them help is incredibly necessary, but we are still only a generation or 2 removed from the atrocities that were happening in the mental health field, especially the hospitals. But we threw the baby out with the bathwater. We started seeing some incredible difficulties that were happening, and all of a sudden, let's close the institutions, and we didn't put anything in place for any kind of safety net to be able to help. And then you have the gun issues. Nobody wants to really have enough backbone to finally say we have to do something about guns. Now, I'm not an advocate that we have to remove every gun. You're never going to get it. Nobody's ever going to listen to you about it. You'll be able to get cheers from some crowd when you say we're going to get every gun. But the other side that's just as polarized will ignore every word that comes out of your mouth. We should be able, though, to come together for some common sense changes that can really make a difference. And I do believe, and I not that I'm big on giving big credit to corporations, but I do give a lot of credit to Dick's Sporting Goods for them coming out just a day or two with their change. They'll no longer do assault rifles and AR-15s in particular. They will no longer sell to anyone under the age of 21. Because I think that unless corporate America and the dollars start making changes, then you're never going to see the change. Everybody profits. And when somebody profits, nobody wants to make change. And then, of course, there's the NRA. The NRA is not the gorilla in the room. The NRA is the behemoth in the room. And quite frankly, because of the dollars that get spent there in terms of being able to support candidates and make sure that they don't lose anything. But I think one of the things that we keep seeing in society is when I have a belief, I go to an extreme so that nothing can move me. So the NRA doesn't even want to compromise on anything. They don't want to even discuss anything. Now you're starting to see something. Okay, maybe we'll help you outlaw bump stocks. Okay, great. Sounds wonderful. But the thing is, they're really not moving on some of the other things. I think common sense is making sure background checks can take place. I think common sense is not being able to buy something at a gun show. Maybe you get it prelim. Maybe you're able to sign up to be able to get it. But I think that you should be able to have a background check. And a gun show, you can't do that. It's immediate sale. I think a lot of these private folks that end up being able to do straw sales, you know, I mean, they've known for years that you've got dealers that will sign up as they're the ones buying it from themselves and giving it to somebody who may not be able to get it. I think those types of penalties should come down hard on those kind of dealers. I think that there's some common things that need to be done. And then, of course, there's just the ability to be able to recognize when an issue comes up, if a phone call gets made, if somebody's trying to warn about somebody. It's a two-edged sword. If all of a sudden you upset me, I make a phone call, hey, Jim Phillips is, you know, I'm worried about Jim Phillips. I think he's going to do something. And then all of a sudden that happens. I can understand how sometimes things are not always followed through with. But I think we have to err on the side of safety. And we have to have some better follow-up when people are making, again, those calls. And I think, you know, since this shooting, how many schools have had scares? I mean, there is something wrong right now where people just think that's a form of entertainment. Let me make a phone call and let me put a few different schools in trouble. It happened a few times already here in Massachusetts since this shooting.
Well, with all the frustrating things you've just talked about, all the things that concern us, all of that, what has given us inspiration in these past 2 weeks is the students of Douglas High School in Florida and their actions following the death of their 17 classmates and staff members. They have been uplifting. That's the only word I can think of.
Again, most of the time you can see any kind of change. And let's face it, right now, there is probably, I feel more confident that something can happen right now about gun reform than in any time I've seen in the last few years. And why? Because it's a groundswell that's coming from the bottom. It is these young folks that are finally saying enough. You know, you can always get a politician that's going to say something. You can always get a preacher on the radio that's going to say something, okay? But it's when everybody else is saying something. It's when everybody's singing the same song. And I don't just mean Kumbaya. I'm talking about no more. You know, that's when you see change. And I tell you, I give these kids a lot of credit. And I think, again, as long as there's some common sense, let's find middle ground. Let's look to start making change. Let's not go to the extremes because then nobody's talking to each other. We're talking at each other. But we got to sit down and talk with each other. And I think you'll see some changes happening.
Any future events coming up here locally that you're working on?
Well, we always love to invite people out to Easter Sunrise. Our Easter Sunrise service. It will not be an April Fool's joke. It's real, but it is on April 1st. Yeah. And Sunrise, now that Congress has changed our daylight savings time and it's earlier, it will be at 6 o'clock. It used to be at 5. We still get a huge crowd. It's always a great turnout. And so that's going to be happening.
Fort Phoenix,
and the gates will be open by 5:30. I think twilight is at 6, where everybody thinks it's sunrise, but the sun actually doesn't crest until about 6:30. So we'll be there, and it's usually about 500 or 600 people that show up. It's incredible the amount of turnout that we get.
Give me the web address where people can make contributions to Rise Up.
RiseUpForHomes.com. You go there and you'll be able to send it. You'll get the address to send it in by mail. You get a donation button that you can plug into. If you are on a cell phone and you like to do things by texting, 50155, the word Rise Up, one word, Rise Up. And you'll be directed to a place where you can make donations.
My thanks to Reverend David Lima, the Executive Minister of the Interchurch Council of New Bedford. Thanks as always for coming in.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Sir.